The conference room went silent in the way expensive spaces do when power shifts hands. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed Portland's skyline in bruised purples and grays, the kind of November afternoon where rain threatened but hadn't yet committed. Cole Brennan stood at the head of the mahogany table, work boots tracking faint mud across carpet that cost more per square foot than his monthly rent, and spoke words that turned six faces the color of old bone. "You're building on contaminated ground, the same contaminated ground that killed my wife." The woman in the charcoal suit. Harper Sterling stopped mid-reach for her coffee. Her phone was already out, manicured fingers moving across the screen with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned not to trust good news. The color drained from her face in stages, starting at her temples and working down. But to understand how a mechanic with grease permanently embedded in the whorls of his fingerprints came to stand in a room where decisions shaped the future of an entire city, you have to rewind. 36 hours earlier, to be exact, when Cole Brennan's biggest concern was whether the transmission rebuild on Bay 3 would finish before the weekend rush. 36 hours earlier. The rain hammered Portland's streets into rivers of neon and brake lights, turning Thursday evening into a watercolor smear of reds and ambers. Cole pulled his 98 F-150 into a spot 3 blocks from Ember Lounge and killed the engine. The wipers stopped mid-arc, leaving 2 clear crescents on glass already starting to fog. His hands still carried the ghost of diesel and degreaser, despite 20 minutes of scrubbing at the shop sink. There was a black crescent under his right thumbnail that no amount of orange pumice would touch. His phone lit up the cab's interior. One text from Iris Crane, the retired teacher who lived next door and had become the closest thing to family since Audrey died 3 years ago. "Willa's asleep. Take your time. You deserve a break." Cole stared at those last 4 words until the screen dimmed. A break. As if an hour away from spreadsheets and overdue bills and the constant low-grade panic of single fatherhood constituted rest. As if he could ever really break from the weight of being both parents to a 7-year-old who still asked why mommy's lungs stopped working. He pocketed the phone and stepped into the downpour. Ember Lounge occupied a corner lot in Portland's Pearl District, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs, the kind of place that served $12 cocktails with hand-carved ice and called fried pickles artisanal. Cole had been inside exactly 3 times before tonight. Twice during his Morrison and Webb days, back when clients expected you to discuss load-bearing calculations over 30-year scotch. Once on the night the divorce papers arrived from his first marriage before Audrey, when he'd needed somewhere anonymous to sit with the wreckage of what he'd thought was forever. Tonight he was here because Tommy Ward, the youngest mechanic at Hartwell's, had worn him down over the course of 3 weeks. "Man, you gotta get out. Work, parent, sleep, repeat. That's not living, that's just not dying. 1 beer. I'm asking for 1 beer." 1 beer had sounded reasonable at the time. Cole pushed through the heavy oak door into warmth and noise and the layered smell of fried food. The bar ran the length of the left wall, all polished copper and backlit bottles arranged like a church altar. Tables filled the center. Booths lined the right side, and that's where his attention snagged and held. 5 men in suits occupied the corner booth, the kind of suits that came from places with Italian names and price tags you didn't ask about. Expensive haircuts, confident postures. The body language of men who'd never waited in a free clinic or checked their bank balance before buying groceries. Their laughter carried across the room with the performative quality of people who wanted to be overheard. The one holding court looked mid-30s, square-jawed with a tan that spoke of recent tropical vacations. He gestured with a rocks glass amber liquid catching the light as he made some point his friends found hilarious. Cole didn't recognize them, didn't particularly care to. He made his way to the bar and took a stool near the end as far from the noise as the space allowed. The bartender, a woman with sleeve tattoos and a silver nose ring, gave him a quick nod. "What can I get you?" "Whatever's on tap. Something local." "You got it." She poured him a pint of amber ale and slid it across the bar top. Cole wrapped both hands around the cold glass and took a long drink. It tasted like pine and citrus, crisp and clean. He let his shoulders drop for the first time since clocking out. Behind him, the laughter from the corner booth spiked again. I'm telling you, this city's ripe for development. You just have to know where to look. Most people don't see potential. They see problems. That's because most people are broke. A younger voice, sharper. More laughter. Cole kept his eyes on his beer. The bartender returned, wiping down the counter with practiced efficiency. Rough day. Long one. Transmission rebuild. Took longer than I thought. You a mechanic? He nodded. Over on MLK Hartwell's. Honest work. She moved down the bar to help another customer. Cole turned the phrase over in his mind. Honest work. It was honest, sure. Paid the bills. Kept Willa in a good school district. Put food on the table. But some nights, lying in bed staring at the ceiling, he thought about the blueprints he used to draft. The buildings he'd helped design. The way a city could grow smart or grow stupid depending on who was making decisions. He'd walked away from all that. Had to. Architecture didn't offer the kind of stability a single father needed. No health insurance, no guaranteed paycheck, just long hours demanding clients and the constant hustle for the next project. So he'd gone back to what his father taught him before the cancer took him. Fixing engines. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. And steady was what Willa needed. What he owed her after failing to protect Audrey. Excuse me. Cole glanced up. One of the suits from the corner booth stood a few feet away, grinning like he'd just won a bet. Mid-20s, maybe. Slicked back hair and a tie that probably cost more than Cole's monthly truck payment. Yeah. My buddies over there were wondering. The guy gestured back toward the booth where the others were watching with barely concealed amusement. You just get off work. Cole looked down at himself. Worn Carhartt jacket. Flannel shirt with a small oil stain near the pocket. Jeans that had seen better days. Work boots with scuffed steel toes. Yeah, I did. What do you do, mechanic? The guy's grin widened. That's awesome, man. Respect. Blue-collar work. You know, real salt-of-the-earth stuff. The condescension dripped from every word like honey off a spoon. Cole took another sip of his beer and said nothing. We're in commercial real estate, the guy continued, louder now, playing to his audience. Development acquisitions, that kind of thing. Big projects, high stakes. He leaned in conspiratorially. Probably a different world from transmissions, right? A few chuckles floated over from the booth. Cole met the guy's eyes. Probably. Right. The suit straightened up, still smiling. Well, hey, keep up the good work, man. Somebody's got to keep our cars running. He turned and walked back to his table where he was greeted with fist bumps and more laughter. Cole set his glass down carefully and stared at the amber liquid inside. His jaw was tight. His pulse was steady. He'd been underestimated before. Dismissed. Treated like furniture. It wasn't new. What was new was the way it reminded him of the building management company that had dismissed his concerns about the water at Riverside Commons. The polite condescension. The pat on the head. The unspoken message that people like him didn't get to question people like them. The bartender reappeared. You okay? Fine. Those guys are jackasses. Yeah. She refilled his glass without asking and moved on. Cole sat there for another 20 minutes, nursing his beer, letting the noise of the bar wash over him. The suits kept talking, kept laughing. At one point, the square-jawed one launched into a story about outbidding another firm on a development deal. His voice swelled with self-satisfaction. Cole listened without meaning to. And they didn't even see it coming. We swooped in, offered 15% over asking, closed in 3 weeks. They're still crying about it. What's the project? Someone asked. Old industrial zone, Riverside District. We're turning it into mixed use. Condos, retail, maybe a boutique hotel. It's going to print money. Cole's hand tightened around his glass so hard his knuckles went white. Riverside District. The name hit him like a fist to the sternum. Not just any district, not just any industrial zone. The same area where Riverside Commons had been built 5 years ago. The same developer logos he'd seen on the settlement paperwork. The same type of aggressive acquisition timeline that had led to cutting corners on environmental testing. The same corner cutting that had killed Audrey. He knew that area. knew it in the way you know the place where everything ended. Back when he was still at Morrison and Webb, they'd been approached about a potential project there. He'd done the preliminary research himself. Soil surveys, floodplain maps, zoning histories. The site had problems, big ones: heavy metal contamination from decades of industrial use, inadequate water table depth, flood zone designations that made construction risky without extensive mitigation. He'd flagged it all. Written a 20-page report. Recommended against proceeding without comprehensive environmental remediation that would cost millions and take years. Morrison and Webb had buried his report, told the client it was commercially unfeasible. But Cole had kept copies, had watched as another firm picked up the project, had watched as they fast-tracked approvals, had watched as Riverside Commons opened with great fanfare and promotional materials showing happy families and affordable housing. He'd watched and said nothing, because it wasn't his project anymore, because speaking up might cost him his job, because he had a wife and a baby daughter who needed health insurance. 6 months after Riverside Commons opened, Audrey started getting sick. Cole's throat tightened. He forced himself to breathe slowly, evenly. The suits were still talking, oblivious. Ryan, one of them, called the square-jawed guy. Ryan was describing the new Riverside project with the same enthusiasm, the same disregard for details, the same assumption that problems were for other people to worry about. Cole stood up, left cash on the bar, and walked out into the rain before he did something he'd regret. The rain followed him home, relentless and cold. When Cole finally pulled into his driveway, he sat for a moment, hands gripping the wheel, staring at the house he'd bought with life insurance money. Blood money, really. Audrey's death had been ruled acute respiratory failure due to pre-existing asthma. The official report from 3 years ago sat in a drawer upstairs alongside the hospital bills and the polite condolence letter from the developer who'd built the Riverside Commons apartments where they'd lived, where she'd died. Cole had known something was wrong 6 months before Audrey collapsed. The smell in their water, metallic, chemical. The way Willa's asthma had suddenly worsened after being fine for 2 years. The way his wife's breathing became labored after showers, her skin breaking out in rashes that doctors couldn't explain. He'd called the building management 17 times, documented every call in a notebook that still sat in his truck's glove compartment. They'd sent someone to test the water, a 20-minute visit, a clipboard, polite reassurances, declared it safe. Blamed Audrey's symptoms on seasonal allergies and stress. 2 months later, Audrey was gone, 34 years old, collapsed in their bathroom while getting ready for work. By the time the ambulance arrived, her lips were blue. Her lungs had filled with fluid. The ER doctor used words like acute pulmonary edema and systemic inflammatory response, but couldn't explain the cause. It wasn't until after the funeral, when Cole was sorting through medical bills in a grief-paralyzed haze, that he found the Tribune investigation. A small article buried on page 12. Riverside Commons residents report mysterious illnesses. The reporter had interviewed 47 families. Respiratory problems, skin conditions. 2 deaths besides Audrey's, both ruled natural causes. The article mentioned that the site had been flagged for contamination during initial surveys, but that concerns were addressed during the permitting process. Cole had pulled the public records, found his own report from 6 years earlier, found the abbreviated version that had been submitted to the city, found where critical warnings had been omitted, found where comprehensive remediation required had become site suitable for residential use with standard precautions. The developer had gotten away with it, cut the corners that needed cutting, saved millions, built their buildings, and when people got sick, they'd settled quietly with NDAs and life insurance payouts that assumed grieving families wouldn't fight. Cole had stayed silent then, grief paralyzed, focused on Willa, who was 4, and asking why Mommy wasn't coming home, afraid that rocking the boat would mean losing the settlement that kept them afloat, afraid that fighting would expose how he'd known years earlier that the site was dangerous and had said nothing after his report was buried. He'd stayed silent, and people had kept dying. The Tribune reporter had tried to make it a bigger story, but without smoking gun proof, without families willing to break their ND, As without someone on the inside willing to testify, the story died. The developer moved on to new projects. Riverside Commons remained open, slowly emptying, as leases expired and residents moved away spooked by rumors, but unable to prove anything. Cole let himself in quietly now, hung his jacket on the hook by the door, and slipped off his boots. The living room was dim lit only by the glow of the nightlight in the hallway. Iris had left a note on the kitchen counter. Willa ate all her dinner. Finished homework. No TV past 8. She's an angel. Cole smiled despite the heaviness in his chest and folded the note. He walked down the hallway and eased open Willa's bedroom door. She was buried under her quilt, one arm flung over her stuffed rabbit, her dark hair spread across the pillow. She looked so much like Audrey, it sometimes hurt to look at her. Same nose, same stubborn chin, same way of sleeping with one knee drawn up. Cole stepped inside and knelt beside the bed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Her breathing was clear tonight. The new medication was working. $60 a refill, but worth every penny to hear her breathe without that awful wheeze. "Love you, kiddo," he whispered. "I won't stay silent this time. I promise." Audrey's voice echoed in his memory from a conversation 3 weeks before she died. They'd been in bed, her head on his chest, talking about the water smell and whether they should move. She'd been scared but trying to hide it. "If something happens to me, promise me you'll fight. Don't let them get away with it. For Willa." He'd promised, then broken that promise by staying quiet after the funeral, paralyzed by grief and fear and the weight of single fatherhood. Paralyzed by the knowledge that he'd failed her twice, once by not pushing harder when the site was being developed, and again by taking their settlement money and signing the NDA. But Ryan Holloway had just handed him a second chance, a new Riverside project. The same developer, the same corner cutting, different families about to move into the same poison. This time Cole wouldn't look away. He stayed beside Willa's bed for a moment longer, watching her breathe, feeling the weight of his choices settle into his bones. Then he retreated to the kitchen, made himself a sandwich he didn't really want, and sat at the table staring at nothing. His mind kept replaying Ryan's voice. Old industrial zone, Riverside District. The casual confidence. The assumption that nothing could go wrong. The same tone the building management had used when they told Cole his concerns were unfounded. He pulled out his laptop and opened the city's public records portal. Typed in Riverside District Development. Pages of documents appeared. Permits, zoning changes, environmental assessments. He recognized some of the language from his own report 6 years ago. And there, buried in a PDF dated 18 months earlier, was a mitigation order from the city's environmental department. Site requires comprehensive remediation before residential or commercial development. Contamination levels exceed safe exposure limits. Water table concerns remain unresolved. Cole's pulse quickened. The order was public record. Anyone could find it. But would anyone look? He kept digging, found the acquisition records. Stone and Mitchell Development had purchased the site 4 months ago, fast-tracked permits, pushed for a groundbreaking date in 6 weeks. The same playbook, the same rush, the same willingness to gamble with people's lives for profit margins. Cole closed his laptop and sat in the dark kitchen listening to the house settle around him. He thought about Audrey's last days in the hospital, the way she'd struggled to breathe, the way she'd looked at him with those frightened eyes and whispered, "Take care of our girl." He thought about the 46 other families from Riverside Commons, the ones who'd settled quietly, the ones still living there, maybe still getting sick, not connecting their symptoms to their homes. He thought about the new families who'd move into Ryan's development, who'd trust that someone had done their homework, who'd assume that buildings in America in the 21st century didn't poison people. Sleep came late, and uneasy, filled with dreams of Audrey drowning in clear water while he stood on shore silent. The next evening found Cole back at Ember Lounge, though he hadn't planned on it. Tommy had bailed something about his girlfriend's birthday, and Cole had driven home fully intending to heat up leftovers and help Willa with her science project. But Iris had insisted she could stay another hour, and Willa had been so focused on building her volcano that she'd barely noticed when he said he was stepping out. So here he was again, same stool, Same bartender. Back already? She slid him a beer without asking. Guess so. Glutton for punishment. Cole almost smiled. The bar was quieter tonight. No suits in the corner booth, just a few scattered tables, a couple at the far end, and a woman sitting 3 stools down from Cole nursing a glass of red wine and reading something on her tablet. She was striking in a way that didn't demand attention but earned it anyway. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair pulled back in a low ponytail, wearing a charcoal blazer over a white blouse. No jewelry except a slim watch. She had the kind of posture that suggested she was used to rooms going quiet when she spoke. Cole glanced at her once, then back at his beer. He wasn't here to make conversation. He was here because sitting at home with his laptop had felt like drowning, and he needed to think in a space that wasn't haunted by Audrey's absence. Rough week. He looked up. The woman was watching him, one eyebrow slightly raised, her expression unreadable. Long one. I know the feeling. She took a sip of wine. You were here last night. Yeah. I saw what happened with those idiots in the suits. Cole shrugged. Not worth thinking about. Maybe. She tilted her head slightly. But you handled it well. Most people would have snapped back. What's the point? She studied him for a moment, then turned back to her tablet. Fair enough. They sat in silence for a while. Cole finished half his beer. The woman made notes on her screen, occasionally frowning at whatever she was reading. Finally she spoke again. You really a mechanic? Yeah. You like it? Cole considered that. It's steady. That's not the same as liking it. No, it's not. She closed her tablet and shifted slightly toward him. What would you rather be doing? No one had asked him that in years. I used to work in architecture, urban planning mostly, designing spaces that actually worked for people, not just developers. What happened? Life. He took another drink. Got married, had a kid, needed something more stable. Then my wife got sick. Then she died, and architecture felt like a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. The woman nodded, not with pity, but with understanding. I'm sorry. That's hard. It was 3 years ago. You'd think it would get easier. Does it? No, you just get better at carrying it. She was quiet for a moment, then extended a hand. Harper Sterling. Cole shook it. Her grip was firm, professional. Cole Brennan. Nice to meet you, Cole. She signaled the bartender for another glass of wine. For what it's worth, those guys last night, not my people. I was here meeting a contractor. They just happened to be loud. You know them? Harper hesitated. One of them. Ryan Holloway. He's my business partner. Cole's stomach tightened. It's complicated. We run a development firm together. He handles acquisitions. I handle operations and design. We don't always see eye to eye. Seems like an understatement. She laughed, short and dry, but genuine. You have no idea. Cole took a long drink, weighing his next words carefully. What do you do? Real estate development. Yeah. Stone and Mitchell Development. We focus on mixed-use projects, trying to do it responsibly, but... She trailed off, looking at her wine. Ryan moves fast, sometimes too fast. Like the Riverside project. Harper looked up sharply. You know about that? I heard him mention it last night. Old industrial zone east side. Yeah, it's our biggest deal this year. Ryan's very excited about it. Have you seen the environmental reports? Harper's expression shifted, something guarded sliding into place. Why do you ask? Because I used to research sites like that, and the Riverside area. He stopped himself. This wasn't the time. Not yet. Just seems like the kind of place that needs thorough vetting. Ryan says it's clean, that the surveys came back fine. And you believe him? Harper looked at him for a long moment. I want to, but honestly I haven't seen the full reports yet. He's been moving too fast. They talked for another hour. Easy conversation, despite the undercurrent of what wasn't being said. Harper asked about his daughter, and Cole found himself telling her about Willa's obsession with volcanoes and her absolute refusal to eat anything green. Harper talked about growing up in Boston, studying economics at Yale, spending 10 years clawing her way up in a male-dominated industry. "Why stay with someone like Ryan?" Cole asked eventually. Harper swirled her wine. "Because he's good at what he does, ruthless but effective, and because walking away would mean starting over. My father founded the company. I've spent a decade building it. Sometimes you stay in partnerships that aren't perfect because the alternative is worse." Cole understood that more than she knew. When he finally glanced at his phone, it was almost 9. "I should go. My neighbor's watching my daughter." "Of course." Harper stood as well, gathering her things. "This was nice. Unexpected, but nice." "Yeah." She handed him a business card. "If you ever want to talk more about urban planning seriously, give me a call. I'm always looking for people who actually understand how cities work." Cole pocketed the card, knowing he would use it, knowing he had to. As he walked out into the cool night air, he felt lighter, but also more burdened. He'd found an opening, a way in. Harper Sterling might be Ryan's partner, but she clearly had doubts, and doubt was all Cole needed to work with. Over the next 2 weeks, Cole found himself at Ember Lounge 3 more times. It became a routine he hadn't planned but didn't resist. Harper was often there, sometimes working, sometimes just decompressing. They'd sit at the bar talking about everything from zoning laws to Willa's science fair project to Harper's frustrations with Ryan's increasingly aggressive acquisition strategies. "He's chasing deals too fast, cutting corners. It's going to bite us." "Like what?" She hesitated, then lowered her voice. "We just closed on the Riverside District project. Ryan pushed it through in record time. I haven't even seen the full environmental reports yet." Cole's stomach tightened. This was it, the moment he'd been waiting for. "You should." "I know, I will." She rubbed her temples. "But Ryan's already talking to investors. He wants to break ground in 6 weeks. That's fast. Too fast." Cole wanted to say more, wanted to tell her everything he knew about Audrey, about Riverside Commons, about the contamination that was still there, still dangerous, still capable of killing. But timing mattered. If he came on too strong, she'd shut down. If he revealed his personal stake too soon, she might question his objectivity. So he stayed quiet, patient, building trust. "Can I ask you something personal?" Harper said one night. "Sure. Your wife, how did she die?" Cole's chest tightened. He'd been waiting for this question, dreading it and needing it in equal measure. "Respiratory failure, officially. But the real answer is more complicated." He took a breath. "We were living in an apartment complex, new construction. She started getting sick about 6 months after we moved in. Breathing problems, rashes. We thought it was stress or allergies or bad luck. The building management said everything was fine. The doctors couldn't find a cause." Harper was watching him intently now. "When she died, I found out there had been complaints from other residents, similar symptoms. The building was on old industrial land. The developer had cut corners on environmental remediation." "God, Cole, I'm so sorry." 47 families got sick. 3 people died. The developer settled quietly, made everyone sign NDAs, moved on to the next project. "Did you fight it?" Cole looked down at his beer. "No, I took the settlement, signed the NDA, used the money to buy a house and keep Willa in daycare. I told myself I was being practical, that fighting wouldn't bring Audrey back." "That's not cowardice. That's survival." "Maybe, but it feels like cowardice." Harper was quiet for a moment. "What was the building called?" "Riverside Commons." He watched her face carefully, saw the moment recognition hit, saw her expression shift from sympathy to something colder, more analytical. "That was one of our projects. Stone and Mitchell built Riverside Commons." "I know." The silence between them stretched taut. "Is that why you're here? Why you've been talking to me?" Cole met her eyes. "At first, no. I didn't know you were connected. But when I heard Ryan talking about the new Riverside project, yeah. I can't watch it happen again." Harper stood up, her face unreadable. "I need to think about this." "Harper, no, I need to think." She left cash on the bar and walked out. Cole sat there alone, wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake. 2 days passed without word from Harper. Cole threw himself into work at the shop, keeping his hands busy to quiet his mind. Willa noticed the change in him. "You're worried again." "A little." "About the lady from the bar?" Cole looked up, surprised. "How did you know about that?" "Iris told me you've been going to have drinks with a friend. Is she nice?" "Yeah, kiddo, she's nice." "Then why are you worried?" "Because I told her something true, and sometimes the truth makes things complicated." Willa considered this while working on her volcano for the science fair. "Mrs. Patterson says telling the truth is brave, even when it's hard." "Mrs. Patterson is right. So you were brave." "I tried to be." Willa looked at him with those serious brown eyes that were so much like Audrey's. "Mommy always said you were the bravest person she knew, even when you were scared." Cole's throat tightened. "Your mom said that?" "Yeah, before she got really sick. She told me that being scared doesn't mean you're not brave. It just means the thing you're doing matters." Cole pulled his daughter into a hug, fighting back tears. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just forget sometimes." It was a Friday night when everything changed. Cole walked into Ember Lounge and immediately felt the energy shift. The corner booth was packed again. Ryan and his crew, plus a few new faces. Champagne bottles cluttered the table. Someone had strung a cheap banner across the back wall. "Riverside. Let's build the future." Harper sat at the bar, her back to the celebration, staring into a glass of wine like it held answers. Cole slid onto the stool beside her. "You okay?" She glanced at him, and he saw exhaustion mixed with something harder, determination. "I spent the last 2 days digging through every file we have on Riverside Commons. The original surveys, the abbreviated reports, the cost-cutting memos." She took a long drink. "You were right, about all of it. We buried the warnings, saved $3 million on remediation, built anyway." "Harper. My father approved it. Ryan executed it. I was just starting at the company then, too, junior to question anything. But I should have. When people started getting sick, I should have pushed harder." "You didn't know." "I didn't want to know. There's a difference." She turned to face him fully. "Ryan just announced the new project to the investors. Full PR rollout. Groundbreaking ceremony scheduled for next month. Same site type. Same rushed timeline. Same willingness to ignore problems." "You still haven't seen the reports?" "He says they're fine, that I'm overthinking it, that the lawyers vetted everything." Before Cole could respond, Ryan's voice boomed across the bar. "Harper, come on. We're celebrating. Stop sulking and get over here." She closed her eyes briefly, then stood. "I should make an appearance, but Cole, don't leave." Cole watched her walk toward the booth, watched Ryan pull her into a one-armed hug while someone shoved a champagne flute into her hand. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Cole turned back to his beer, his mind racing. This was it. The moment that had been building for 2 weeks, for 3 years really, since the night Audrey died. 10 minutes later, Ryan's voice cut through the noise again, this time directed at him. "Hey, mechanic guy." Cole's jaw tightened. He didn't turn around. "Yeah, you." Ryan was standing now, champagne in hand, grin wide and loose with alcohol. "Come here for a second." The bar went quiet. Cole slowly swiveled on his stool, meeting Harper's eyes across the room. She gave him the smallest nod. Ryan gestured him over. "Come on, don't be shy. We're celebrating. Biggest development deal in Portland this year." Harper's face was pale, but her expression had shifted to something resolute. Cole stood and walked toward the booth, every eye in the bar following him. His pulse hammered in his ears, but his steps were steady. He thought of Audrey, of Willa, of the 46 other families, of the promise he'd made and broken and was finally about to keep. Ryan slung an arm around his shoulders like they were old friends. "This guy's a mechanic. Real salt-of-the-earth type. I love it. Blue-collar backbone of America, am I right?" A few uncomfortable chuckles. "So tell me, what do you think of all this?" Ryan waved his glass toward the banner. "Big development, luxury condos, retail spaces. We're going to transform that whole neighborhood." Cole looked at the banner, at the champagne, at Harper, who stood perfectly still waiting. Then he looked at Ryan. "Which project are we cheering for?" Ryan blinked. "What? You said biggest deal in Portland this year. Which project?" "Riverside District, man. Keep up." Ryan laughed. "We just closed on it. Going to be huge." Cole nodded slowly. "Where in the Riverside District?" "East Side, near the river." "Why?" And that's when Cole felt something shift inside him. Not anger, not rage, just a deep, settled certainty that silence was no longer an option. That this moment, this exact moment, was what every choice of the last 3 years had been leading toward. "Because you're building on contaminated ground." The room went dead silent. Ryan's smile faltered. "What?" Cole's voice was steady, but his heart hammered against his ribs. "The east side of Riverside sits on a former industrial zone. The soil's contaminated. Heavy metals, petroleum byproducts. The water table's less than 6 feet down, and the whole area is in a floodplain. The city flagged it for environmental mitigation 3 years ago." 3 years ago, when Audrey was still alive, when the same warnings were ignored. The same warnings that were ignored at Riverside Commons, where 47 people got sick, where my wife died breathing poison that came through the pipes every time she took a shower. Ryan's face flushed. "That's we had it surveyed." "Did you read the survey? Or just the summary your acquisition team gave you? Because I've seen what happens when people don't read the fine print. I buried my wife because of it." Harper pulled out her phone, her fingers moving across the screen. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Ryan snapped. "Someone who used to do this for a living, before I fixed transmissions. Someone who researched this exact site 6 years ago and flagged every problem you're about to ignore. Someone who stayed silent once and watched people die and won't make that mistake again." Harper's face drained of color as she stared at her screen. "He's right. The city records there's a mitigation order dated 18 months ago. Comprehensive remediation required. The same language from the Riverside Commons surveys." Ryan stared at her. "That's impossible. We wouldn't have—" "You rushed it," Harper said, her voice shaking. "You cut corners. You didn't do the full environmental review, just like last time. I saved us time. You built a foundation on lies." Cole's voice was quiet but carried across the silent room. "Just like you did when you built Riverside Commons. When you killed my wife and 46 other people and settled quietly and moved on like it never happened." The silence was suffocating. Someone's phone buzzed, then another. Word was already spreading. Ryan stood there, champagne glass trembling in his hand, his face a mixture of rage and dawning horror. We didn't know." "You didn't want to know. There's a difference." Ryan turned and walked out of the bar without another word. The booth emptied quickly after that. Investors muttering into phones, assistants gathering coats. The banner hung limp and mocking. Harper stood frozen still, staring at her screen. Cole walked back to the bar, picked up his beer, and took a long drink. His hands were steady. His breathing was even. He felt lighter than he had in 3 years. The bartender looked at him with something like awe. "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen." Cole didn't feel badass. He felt like he'd finally exhaled after holding his breath for 1,000 days. Harper appeared beside him a moment later. Her hands were shaking. "You just saved my company. And maybe saved lives. Probably both. I just told the truth. Most people wouldn't have. Not like that." Cole met her eyes. Most people don't wake up every morning knowing their silence killed someone they love. She sat down beside him, and for a long time neither of them said anything. Outside, the rain started again, soft and steady, washing the streets clean. Across the bar, tucked into a shadowed corner booth, Cole hadn't noticed a woman in her 40s with sharp features and a sharper suit lowered her phone. Lauren Cross had been watching the entire exchange with the cold calculation of someone who'd spent 20 years learning how to turn disasters into opportunities. She'd seen how the board would react to this, how Ryan's failure would create a power vacuum, how someone competent and ruthless could step into that vacuum. and how this mechanic, this unexpected variable, had just made himself a threat to anyone who benefited from the old way of doing things. She typed a message carefully, then deleted it. No digital trail. This would require a subtler touch, a longer game. Lauren finished her drink and left through the side exit, already planning the first move in a campaign that would take weeks to unfold. Cole Brennan had just declared war on the way Portland built itself. He didn't know it yet, but wars have casualties, and Lauren Cross intended to make sure he was one of them. The rain had stopped by the time Cole pulled into his driveway that night, but the street still gleamed under the streetlights, slick and reflective like polished obsidian. He sat in his truck for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, staring at the dark windows of his house. Iris had left the porch light on, a small kindness he noticed every time but had stopped acknowledging out loud because gratitude felt inadequate for the things that kept you functional. His phone buzzed. A text from Harper. "Thank you, I mean it." He didn't reply. Didn't know what to say. He'd only told the truth, something that shouldn't require gratitude but somehow did in a world where convenience often trumped accuracy. He pocketed the phone and headed inside. The house was quiet in the way only empty houses manage a particular quality of silence that has weight and texture. Iris had left her usual note on the kitchen counter this time with a smiley face drawn at the bottom. Cole smiled despite himself, folded the note, and added it to the small stack he kept in the drawer. Evidence of consistency. Proof that someone cared. He checked on Willa asleep as always, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight, then retreated to the kitchen. He made himself a sandwich he didn't really want and sat at the table staring at nothing. His mind kept replaying the moment. Ryan's face draining of color, Harper's hand shaking as she scrolled through city records, the way the entire booth had emptied like someone had pulled a fire alarm. He'd humiliated a powerful man in front of his investors. That wasn't something people forgot or forgave. Cole took a bite of his sandwich, chewed mechanically, and wondered if he'd just made his quiet life significantly more complicated. Saturday morning arrived with pale sunlight and the smell of pancakes. Willa sat at the kitchen table in her pajamas, swinging her legs and chattering about the science fair, while Cole flipped batter on the griddle. "And Mrs. Patterson said my volcano was the best in the class, but I think she says that to everyone. But mine actually worked, Dad. Like really worked. Tommy's just kind of fizzled." "That's because you followed the measurements. Science is all about precision." "Like building stuff?" "Exactly like building stuff." Willa drowned her pancakes in syrup, took a huge bite, and grinned at him with chipmunk cheeks. Cole felt the tightness in his chest ease slightly. This was real. This mattered. Whatever happened at Ember Lounge was just noise. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Cole Brennan." A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "This is Rachel Newen. I'm a reporter with the Portland Tribune. I'm covering the Riverside District development story, and I understand you were involved in revealing some significant environmental concerns last night." Cole's stomach sank. "How did you get my number?" "I have sources. Look, I just want to ask you a few questions about—" "I'm not interested." "Mr. Brennan, the public has a right to know about—" He hung up. Willa was watching him, syrup dripping from her fork. "Who was that?" "Nobody important. Finish your breakfast." The phone rang again. Different number. He let it go to voicemail. Then again, and again. By noon he'd received 7 calls from various reporters, 3 emails and a text from Tommy at the shop. "Dude, what did you do last night? You're trending on Twitter." Cole didn't have Twitter. Didn't want Twitter. He silenced his phone and took Willa to the park, where they spent 2 hours on the swings and the jungle gym. Her laughter cut through the autumn air like something clean and uncomplicated. When they got home, there was a car parked across the street, a silver sedan with tinted windows. Cole's jaw tightened. He ushered Willa inside, quickly locked the door, and peered through the front window. The sedan didn't move. His phone buzzed. "Harper, we need to talk. Can you meet me somewhere private?" Cole hesitated, then typed back. "When tonight?" 7 p.m. I'll send you an address." The address Harper sent led to a coffee shop in the Hawthorne district, the kind of place that smelled like fair trade beans and had poetry readings on Thursday nights. Cole arrived early, ordered a black coffee, and chose a table in the back corner where he could see the entrance. Harper walked in at exactly 7, wearing jeans and a navy sweater, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her. She looked tired in a way that went deeper than lack of sleep, the kind of exhaustion that comes from fighting battles most people never see. She spotted him, ordered something at the counter, then joined him at the table. "Thanks for coming. What's going on?" Harper wrapped both hands around her cup even though it was too hot to drink. "The board called an emergency meeting this morning. Ryan's been suspended pending a full review of the Riverside acquisition." That was fast. It had to be. The investors are furious. The city's threatening to pull permits. Our lawyers are scrambling. She looked up at him. "You were right about everything. The contamination, the flood zone, the mitigation order Ryan ignored. If we'd broken ground, it would have been a catastrophe." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You saved us." She took a careful sip of her coffee. "But now there's a problem." Of course there was. Ryan's lawyers are floating the idea that you had some kind of vendetta, that you sabotaged the deal because of what happened the first night at the bar. Cole stared at her. "That's insane." "I know. But they're scrambling. And you're an easy target. A mechanic who used to work in architecture. It sounds like someone with an axe to grind." "I don't even know Ryan. I didn't know about the project until he announced it." "I believe you, but belief and proof are different things." She set her cup down. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Did you know about the Riverside issues before that night?" "I knew the site had problems. Years ago when I worked at Morrison & Webb, we looked at it for a potential client. The research I did back then stuck with me, but I didn't know Ryan bought it until he said so." Harper nodded slowly. "Okay, that's what I thought." She pulled out her phone and showed him a screen. "This is a public records request I filed this morning. It shows the entire environmental history of the Riverside site. Every flag, every report, every warning the city issued. It's all public information. Anyone could have found it." But Ryan didn't. No. He relied on his acquisition team, and they cut corners. She put her phone away. "I'm going to make sure the board understands that you didn't sabotage anything. You just did what Ryan should have done in the first place. Your homework." "Will they listen?" "They will if I have anything to say about it. This is my company, too. I've spent 10 years building it. I'm not going to let Ryan destroy it because he was too arrogant to read a report." Cole believed her. There was steel in her voice, the kind that came from fighting battles most people never saw. "There's something else. The press is all over this. Your name's out there. People are calling you a whistleblower, a hero, all kinds of things." "I'm not a hero. I just answered a question." "That's not how the world works, Cole. You embarrassed powerful people. That makes you either a hero or a target depending on who's telling the story. I don't want to be either. I just want to go to work, pick up my daughter from school, and live my life." Harper studied him for a long moment. "I get that. I do. But I don't think that's an option anymore." By Monday morning, the story had spread beyond local business circles. The Portland Tribune ran a front-page feature with the headline, "Reed Mechanic Exposes Major Flaws in Multimillion-Dollar Development Deal." The article was fair, at least. It quoted Harper extensively, included statements from city planners, and painted Ryan as reckless rather than malicious. But it also included Cole's work history, his background in architecture, and a quote from an anonymous source calling him someone who clearly understands the technical side of urban development better than most professionals. Tommy texted him a screenshot. "You're famous, bro." Cole didn't feel famous. He felt exposed. At the shop, customers started recognizing him. Some wanted to shake his hand. Others just stared. One guy asked for a selfie, which Cole declined as politely as possible. "You're handling this well," Frank Hartwell said during lunch. Frank was in his 60s, a Navy veteran with grease permanently embedded in the lines of his hands, and a philosophy degree he'd earned via correspondence course while stationed in the Pacific. Most people would let it go to their heads. "I'm not most people." No kidding. Frank bit into his sandwich. You planning to go back to architecture? No. Why not? You're good at it. People are noticing. Cole wiped his hands on a rag. Because this is stable. Architecture isn't. I can't risk that with Willa depending on me. Frank nodded, chewing thoughtfully. Fair enough. But don't stay in a box just because it's familiar kid. Sometimes the stable thing is the riskiest choice of all. Cole thought about that for the rest of the day, turning it over in his mind like a stone he couldn't quite fit into the puzzle of his life. That evening, after Willa was asleep, Cole sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open. He'd been avoiding this, but curiosity finally won. He pulled up the city's public records portal and typed in Riverside District. Page after page of documents appeared. Environmental assessments, soil contamination reports, flood zone designations, mitigation orders. Everything he'd mentioned at the bar laid out in bureaucratic detail. It was all there. Public. Accessible to anyone with an internet connection and the patience to look. Ryan hadn't just cut corners. He'd ignored an entire roadmap of warnings. Cole kept scrolling. He found the original survey Morrison and Webb had commissioned years ago, the one he'd worked on. His name was buried in the credits Junior Researcher Soil Analysis. He'd been 26 then, fresh out of grad school, excited about every project, no matter how small. That version of himself felt like a stranger now. His phone buzzed. Harper again. Board meeting tomorrow. They want to talk to you. Cole stared at the message. Why? They have questions, and I think they have an offer. I'm not interested in offers. Just hear them out. Please. You owe me that much. He did owe her. She'd vouched for him when she didn't have to. He typed back. What time? 10 a.m. I'll send you the address. The offices of Stone and Mitchell Development occupied the top floor of a glass tower downtown, all polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Cole felt distinctly out of place in his cleanest jeans and a button-down shirt he'd ironed twice. Harper met him in the lobby wearing a charcoal suit and the same unreadable expression she'd had the first night they met. Nervous. Should I be? Probably. She led him toward the elevators. But don't let them intimidate you. Half of them don't know the difference between a load-bearing wall and drywall. The elevator rose smoothly, silently. Cole watched the city shrink below them. Why are you doing this? Harper glanced at him. Doing what? Putting yourself on the line for me. You don't know me. I know enough, and I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do. Something Ryan forgot a long time ago. The elevator doors opened. The conference room was massive, dominated by a long table surrounded by leather chairs. 6 people sat waiting. 4 men, 2 women, all expensive suits and watchful eyes. Harper made introductions. Names Cole immediately forgot except for one. Victor Crane, Harper's father and the company's founder. He was in his 70s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who'd built empires and wasn't shy about it. Mr. Brennan, thank you for coming. Victor gestured to a chair. Cole sat. Harper took the seat beside him. We've been reviewing the Riverside situation, and while it's been embarrassing for the company, we recognize that your intervention prevented a much larger disaster. I wasn't trying to intervene. I was just answering a question. With information that saved us millions of dollars in lawsuits and potential loss of life. One of the women leaned forward. That's not nothing. We've also reviewed your background, Victor continued. Morrison and Webb speaks highly of you. They said you left to pursue more stable work. Admirable given your circumstances. Cole's jaw tightened. What's your point? Victor smiled slightly. Direct. I like that. Mr. Brennan, we'd like to offer you a consulting position. Part-time flexible hours. Your job would be to review our projects before acquisition. Environmental assessment, zoning compliance, structural feasibility. Essentially, you'd do what you did with Riverside, but before we waste money on bad deals. Cole stared at him. You want me to be a fact-checker? We want you to be the person who keeps us honest, Harper said quietly. Someone who understands the technical side and isn't afraid to speak up when something's wrong. I have a job, a daughter. I can't. Part-time, Victor repeated. 20 hours a week, max. You set your own schedule. We pay competitive consulting rates. Significantly more than you make at the garage, I'd imagine. One of the men slid a folder across the table. Cole opened it. The number at the bottom made his stomach flip. This is too much. It's what you're worth, and it's what we should have been paying someone to do all along. Cole closed the folder. I need to think about it. Of course. Take a week. But Mr. Brennan, I'll be blunt. You have a gift for this work. It would be a waste to spend the rest of your life rebuilding transmissions when you could be rebuilding how this city grows. Cole didn't go back to the shop that afternoon. He drove aimlessly for an hour, windows down, radio off, just the sound of wind and his own thoughts. Everything Frank had said echoed in his head. Everything his ex-wife had said the night she left. You're wasting your potential, Cole. You're too scared to take risks. Everything he'd told himself for 7 years. Stability matters. Willa matters. Nothing else does. But what if stability wasn't just about paychecks? What if it was also about building something that lasted? He ended up at the park where he'd taken Willa the day before. Sat on a bench, watched kids climb and fall and get back up. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. This is Ryan. We need to talk. Cole's pulse quickened. He didn't respond. Another text. I know you think I'm the bad guy here. Maybe I am. But you don't know the whole story. Cole typed back. I don't need to. You embarrassed me in front of my investors. You cost me my reputation. You think that doesn't have consequences? You did that to yourself. I just pointed it out. The phone rang. Ryan calling. Cole answered. What do you want? Ryan's voice was tight, controlled. To apologize. For how I treated you at the bar. I was out of line. Cole said nothing. I'm not a bad person. I made mistakes. Cut corners I shouldn't have. But I'm not the villain everyone's making me out to be. Then why are you calling me? Ryan was quiet for a moment. Because you're getting offered something I built, and I want you to know what you're walking into. I haven't accepted anything. But you're thinking about it. Harper's good at convincing people. She makes everything sound noble, righteous. But that company was mine before it was hers. I built it from nothing. And now they're pushing me out because I made one bad call. It wasn't one bad call. You ignored warnings. You rushed a deal. You put people at risk. And you were the white knight who saved everyone. Must feel good being the hero. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who reads the fine print. Then read this. Harper's father wants you because you're useful. The second you stop being useful, they'll drop you just like they're dropping me. Don't fool yourself into thinking you matter to them. The line went dead. Cole sat there, phone in hand, staring at the playground. He didn't know if Ryan was right, didn't know if it mattered. But he knew one thing. He wasn't making this decision out of fear. Not anymore. That night, after tucking Willa in, Cole sat down at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. Old school, the way his father had taught him to think through big decisions. He drew a line down the middle of the page. On the left, reasons to stay at the shop. Stability. Routine. No risk. Willa's schedule stays the same. On the right, reasons to take the consulting job. Better pay. Meaningful work. Using skills he'd spent years developing. He stared at the 2 columns for a long time. Then he added one more line to the right side. Teaching Willa that scared isn't the same as smart. His phone buzzed. Harper. No pressure, but the offer stands. Whatever you decide, I respect it. Cole looked at the notebook, at the 2 columns, at the life he'd built from caution and the life he'd once imagined. He picked up his phone and typed. I'll do it. Part-time. And I keep my job at the shop until I'm sure this works. Harper's response came immediately. Deal. Thank you, Cole. He set the phone down, closed the notebook, and felt something shift inside him. Not certainty exactly, but something close to hope. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Cole got up, checked the locks, and turned off the lights. Tomorrow he'd tell Frank, tell Willa. figure out how to balance two worlds that had never touched before. But tonight, for the first time in years, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he'd made the right choice. Morning came too early. Cole's alarm went off at 5:30, same as always, and he lay there for a moment in the dark, feeling the weight of what he'd agreed to settle over him like a second blanket. Part-time consultant. 20 hours a week reviewing projects for a company that built the kind of structures he used to dream about designing. It sounded impossible when he said it out loud in his head. He got up anyway, made coffee, made Willa's lunch. The routine steadied him. Willa appeared in the kitchen doorway at 6:15, rubbing her eyes, her hair sticking up in 3 different directions. "Morning, kiddo." She climbed into her chair and yawned. "You're up early." "I'm always up early." "Earlier than early." She picked up her fork. "You okay?" Cole sat down across from her with his coffee. 7 years old, and she could already read him better than most adults. "I need to talk to you about something." Willa's eyes widened slightly. "Are we moving?" "No, nothing like that." He took a breath. "I got offered another job, part-time. I'd still work at the shop, but I'd also be helping a company make sure their buildings are safe." "Like what you used to do before I was born?" "Yeah, kind of like that." Willa considered this while chewing. "Would you be gone more?" "I don't know yet. Maybe a little. But I'd still pick you up from school, still make dinner, still help with homework, and still read to me at night. Always." She nodded, satisfied. "Okay, then you should do it." Just like that. "Mrs. Patterson says we should do things that make us happy." Willa took another bite. "Does it make you happy?" Cole thought about that. Happy felt like too big a word, but something close to it, something that felt like purpose. "Yeah, I think it does." "Then you should definitely do it. Plus maybe you'll make more money and we can get a dog." Cole laughed despite himself. "We'll see about the dog." "That's what you always say." "Because it's true." She rolled her eyes in the way only a newly minted 7-year-old could. "Whatever you say, Dad." Cole drove her to school, watched her disappear into the building with her backpack bouncing, then sat in the parking lot for a moment gathering himself. He had to tell Frank next. That conversation would be harder. Frank was already at the shop when Cole arrived elbow-deep in the engine compartment of a Ford pickup, a cigarette tucked behind his ear, even though he'd quit smoking 5 years ago. "You're late." By 3 minutes. "Still late." Frank straightened, wiping his hands on a rag that was somehow dirtier than his hands. "You look like you got something on your mind." Cole leaned against the workbench. "I got offered a consulting job, part-time, with a development firm downtown. They want me to review projects, make sure they're not building on bad ground. That kind of thing. Good money. Better than here." Frank raised an eyebrow. "You taking it?" "I want to, but I don't want to leave you hanging. I was hoping I could do both. Keep working here, maybe adjust my hours." "What are you asking me for?" "You're a grown man. You make your own decisions." "I'm asking because you gave me this job when nobody else would. When I had a baby and a divorce and no references. I don't forget that." Frank studied him for a long moment. Then he pulled the cigarette from behind his ear, looked at it, and put it back. "You're too smart to be changing oil for the rest of your life, kid. I've known that since day one. This place kept you stable, but stable's good only until it becomes stuck." Frank crossed his arms. "You do what you need to do. We'll figure out the schedule. And if it doesn't work out, you've still got a spot here." Just like that. "Thanks, Frank." "Don't thank me yet. You're still cleaning the bathroom this week." 3 days later, Cole found himself back in the glass tower downtown, this time in a smaller conference room with Harper and 2 other people. A woman named Sandra, who handled project acquisitions, and a younger guy named Marcus, who managed environmental compliance. "We're starting you with something straightforward," Harper said, sliding a folder across the table. "A proposed retail center in Beaverton. Acquisition team says it's clean. We want you to verify." Cole opened the folder. Site maps, soil reports, zoning documents, traffic studies. the familiar language of development, technical and precise. What's the timeline? 2 weeks. We need your assessment before we move forward with the purchase. That's tight. We know, but if there are problems we need to know now, not after we've sunk money into it. Cole flipped through the documents, his eyes catching on details, inconsistencies, small flags that most people would miss. I'll need access to city records, full environmental history, and I want to visit the site. Done. Whatever you need. Marcus leaned forward. I've been doing compliance here for 3 years. If you have questions about process, I'm your guy. Appreciate it. They spent the next hour going over logistics, access protocols, reporting structures. Cole took notes in the small notebook he'd brought, the same one he'd used to weigh his decision. By the time they finished, his head was swimming with information. Harper walked him to the elevator. You okay? You look overwhelmed. Just a lot to absorb. You'll be fine. Better than fine. She pressed the button. And Cole, thank you for doing this. I know it's not easy balancing 2 jobs and a kid. I'm still figuring out if it's possible. It is. I've seen you handle worse. The elevator arrived. Cole stepped inside, then turned back. What happened to Ryan? Harper's expression tightened. He's on leave. The board's still deciding if it's permanent. He called me, said I was taking something he built. He's angry, humiliated. He'll say anything to make himself feel better. Don't let him get in your head. You earned this. The doors slid shut before Cole could respond. That evening, Cole spread the Beaverton project documents across his kitchen table. After Willa went to bed, he made fresh coffee, put on an old playlist of instrumental music, and started reading. The first pass-through took 2 hours. The site looked clean on the surface. Flat land, good drainage, no obvious contamination flags. But something nagged at him. A reference in the traffic study to historical use that wasn't elaborated on. He pulled up the city's property records on his laptop and started digging. By midnight, he'd traced the site back 40 years. It had been agricultural land in the 80s, then sat vacant for a decade, then briefly housed a dry cleaning business in the late 90s. Dry cleaning. Cole's pulse quickened. He knew what that meant. Perchloroethylene contamination, PERC, a solvent used in dry cleaning that seeped into groundwater and stuck around for decades. He cross-referenced with the state's environmental database. Sure enough, the dry cleaner had been flagged for improper disposal in 1998. Cleanup had been initiated but never completed. The property changed hands twice, and somewhere along the way the contamination issue got buried in paperwork. Cole sat back, rubbing his eyes. The current soil report in the acquisition folder made no mention of it. Either the testing hadn't gone deep enough or someone had cherry-picked clean samples. He made notes, pulled maps, highlighted sections of the report that didn't add up. By the time he finally went to bed, it was 2 a.m. His alarm would go off in 3.5 hours. But he'd found it. Another problem hiding in plain sight. Harper called him at 7:30 the next morning while he was driving Willa to school. I read your preliminary report. Are you sure about this? Completely. The site's contaminated. Not enough to be dangerous to people walking around, but enough to be a problem if you're digging foundations and disturbing the soil. The acquisition team swears it's clean. Then they didn't look hard enough. Cole pulled into the school parking lot. I can show you exactly where the contamination is and how it got there. But if you want to build there, you're looking at remediation costs that'll blow your budget. Harper was quiet for a moment. Okay, send me everything. We're meeting with the sellers this afternoon. I need ammunition. You got it. Cole, this is exactly why we hired you. He smiled slightly. Just doing my job. After dropping Willa off, he drove to the Beaverton site himself. It was a flat, empty lot surrounded by chain-link fence weeds growing through cracks in the old asphalt. A faded sign advertised it as prime commercial space. Cole walked the perimeter, taking photos, noting the slight depression in the northwest corner where the dry cleaner used to sit. You could still see the outline of the old foundation if you knew what to look for. His phone rang. Unknown number again. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Cole Brennan. A man's voice. Older, formal. My name is Stephen Morrison. Morrison and Webb Architecture. You worked for us about 8 years ago. Cole's breath caught. I remember. I've been following the news. The Riverside situation. I have to say I'm impressed. You always had an eye for detail, but this was exceptional work. Thank you. I'm calling because we have a position opening up. Senior Project Manager. It would mean coming back full-time, but the pay is competitive, and the work is exactly what you used to do. Cole stood there in the empty lot, phone pressed to his ear, feeling the world tilt slightly. I appreciate the offer, but I can't. I've got a daughter. I need flexibility that a full-time position can't give me. We could work something out, remote work, adjusted hours. I'm sorry, I really am, but the answer's no. Morrison was quiet for a moment. Well, if you change your mind, the door's open. You're one of the best researchers we ever had. The call ended. Cole stood there staring at the contaminated ground beneath his feet and felt something settle in him. He'd made the right choice. Not the glamorous one, not the one that would look good on paper, but the right one. The meeting with the Beaverton sellers went exactly as Cole predicted. Harper presented his findings. The sellers tried to deflect. Their own environmental consultant was forced to admit that yes, there were historical contamination issues that hadn't been fully disclosed. The deal fell apart in 45 minutes. Sandra was furious when Harper called Cole to debrief. That was 3 months of work down the drain. Better than $3 million in remediation costs. Cole saved us from a disaster. He's costing us deals. He's keeping us from making stupid mistakes, which is exactly what we hired him to do. Cole could hear the edge in Harper's voice even through the phone. Sandra hung up without another word. Don't take it personally, Marcus said later, catching up with Cole in the hallway during his next visit to the office. She's under a lot of pressure to close deals. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make sure buildings don't fall down. Marcus grinned. I like you, man. You don't pull punches. Over the next month, Cole reviewed 4 more projects. He flagged 2 for serious issues, one for unstable soil, another for inadequate drainage that would flood basements within 5 years. The other 2 passed with minor recommendations. His reputation within the company grew. Some people appreciated his thoroughness. Others resented it. Sandra barely spoke to him, but Harper backed him completely, and Victor made a point of shaking his hand at every board meeting. You're making us look smart and saving us a fortune. Keep it up. Cole kept working both jobs, 5 days a week at Frank's shop, evenings and weekends on consulting work. It was exhausting, but it was also the most engaged he'd felt in years. Willa noticed. You smile more now, like you're not just tired all the time. I'm still tired, but it's a different kind of tired. Good tired. Yeah, good tired. 6 weeks into his new role, Cole got a text from a number he'd deleted but still recognized. Ryan. We need to talk. In person. Cole stared at the message for a full minute before responding. Why? Because I owe you an apology. A real one. You already apologized, not the way I should have. Meet me for coffee. 1 hour, that's all I'm asking. Against his better judgment, Cole agreed. They met at a small cafe near the waterfront, neutral territory. Ryan was already there when Cole arrived, sitting at a corner table looking thinner and older than he had 2 months ago. Thanks for coming. Ryan's voice was quieter than Cole remembered, stripped of the performative confidence. You've got 1 hour. Ryan nodded. I've been in therapy. Court-ordered, actually, as part of my leave agreement, and my therapist made me write down everything I did wrong with Riverside. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. It's a long list. Cole said nothing. I rushed the acquisition because I wanted to beat another firm to it. I ignored the environmental reports because they were inconvenient. I mocked you because it made me feel superior. Ryan looked up and his eyes were red-rimmed. And when you called me out, I tried to destroy your reputation because I couldn't handle being wrong. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better. Because I spent 10 years building a career on being the smartest guy in the room, and it turned out I was just the loudest. Ryan unfolded the paper. This is everything I should have checked before buying that land. Every single thing. You knew all of it off the top of your head. I had to Google it. Cole took the paper. It was covered in Ryan's handwriting. Soil types, contamination markers, floodplain designations, zoning restrictions. I don't want your job. I'm not asking for that. I just wanted you to know that you were right about all of it, and I'm sorry I made you the villain when I was the one who screwed up. Cole folded the paper and handed it back. What are you going to do now? I don't know. The board hasn't made a final decision, but even if they let me come back, I don't think I should. I need to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to prove something. They sat in silence for a moment. For what it's worth, I hope you figure it out. Because being an asshole isn't a permanent condition. It's just a choice you kept making. Ryan laughed, short and bitter, but genuine. My therapist said almost the exact same thing. They talked for another 20 minutes, not as friends, but not as enemies either. Just two people who'd collided in the worst possible way and were trying to make sense of the aftermath. When they finally parted ways, Ryan shook Cole's hand. You're good at this work. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Cole watched him walk away, shoulders hunched against the wind, and felt something close to sympathy. That night, Cole sat in Ember Lounge for the first time in weeks. The place felt different now, or maybe he felt different. People recognized him. A few nodded. One woman raised her glass in acknowledgement. The bartender grinned when she saw him. Well, well, the man of the hour. Don't start. Too late. You're a legend here. She poured him his usual beer. On the house. You made those suits look like idiots. That's worth a free beer. Harper slid onto the stool beside him a few minutes later, still in her work clothes, looking exhausted but satisfied. Rough day. Long day. Good day. The board approved 3 new projects. All of them passed your review. That's what I'm here for. It's more than that. You're changing how we do business. People are actually reading environmental reports now. Sandra's team is doing better research before acquisitions. You've made us better. I just do my job. Stop being so humble. It's annoying. She smiled. You know what Victor said today? He said hiring you was the smartest decision we've made in 5 years. He's just happy I'm saving him money. He's happy you have integrity. That's rarer than you think. They sat there drinking, watching the bar fill up with the usual Thursday night crowd. At some point, someone played an old jazz song on the jukebox, and the whole place seemed to exhale. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you ever regret it? Walking away from architecture the first time? Cole thought about that. I used to, but I don't think I could have been the kind of father Willa needed if I'd stayed. Architecture demands everything. I didn't have everything to give, and now I get to do both. Not perfectly, but enough. Harper nodded slowly. I envy that. The clarity. You have clarity. You just don't trust it yet. She looked at him surprised. That might be the most insightful thing anyone said to me in months. I'm full of surprises. Yeah, you really are. They stayed until closing, talking about everything and nothing. And when Cole finally drove home through empty streets, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not happiness exactly, not peace, but something close to both, something like belonging. Across town, in an office that stayed lit long after everyone else had gone home, Lauren Cross sat at her desk reviewing acquisition reports and nursing a glass of whiskey that had gone warm. Her performance review sat open on her laptop screen, the numbers stark and damning. 3 deals lost, 2 flagged by the new consultant, 1 pulled entirely after Cole Brennan's assessment revealed foundation issues that would have cost them everything. Her bonus cut by 40%. Her standing with this board precarious, her future at Stone and Mitchell uncertain. She opened a new browser window and began typing, fingers moving with the methodical precision of someone who'd learned long ago that survival meant staying 3 steps ahead. She found what she was looking for in less than 10 minutes. An encrypted email service, anonymous, untraceable if you knew what you were doing. And Lauren Cross had spent 20 years learning exactly what to do. She created an account, chose a name, began drafting the first message that would over the coming weeks build a narrative so convincing that even Cole Brennan wouldn't see it coming. The foundation of his downfall laid one careful lie at a time. The belonging didn't last long. 2 weeks later, Cole was under the hood of a Honda Accord at Frank's shop when his phone rang. Harper's name flashed on the screen. He wiped his hands and answered. "We have a problem. Can you come downtown now?" Her voice carried an edge he'd never heard before, something that sat between panic and fury. "What kind of problem?" "The kind I can't discuss over the phone." Cole glanced at Frank, who was watching from across the garage. "I'm in the middle of—" "Cole, please, it's important." He heard something in her voice he'd never heard before. Fear. "Give me 40 minutes. Frank didn't ask questions when Cole explained he had to leave, just nodded, and took over the Honda. "Go do what you got to do." The drive downtown felt longer than usual. Traffic crawled. Rain started halfway there, turning the streets slick and gray. By the time Cole reached the glass tower, his shirt was damp, and his mind was racing through possibilities, none of them good. Harper met him in the lobby herself, which was unusual. She looked like she hadn't slept, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail instead of her usual sleek style. "What's going on?" "Conference room. Victor's waiting." They rode the elevator in silence. The tension rolled off Harper in waves. The conference room held more people than Cole expected. Victor sat at the head of the table, his usual composure cracked around the edges. Sandra was there, arms crossed, expression stormy. Marcus looked nervous. And 2 people Cole didn't recognize, a woman in an expensive suit with a leather briefcase and a man in his 50s who had the tired, watchful look of someone who'd seen too many corporate disasters. "Mr. Brennan, thank you for coming on short notice." Victor's voice was measured but strained. "This is Patricia Chen, our corporate attorney, and Detective James Brennan from the Portland Police Bureau." Cole's stomach dropped. "Police, please sit." Patricia's voice was crisp, professional, revealing nothing. Cole sat beside Harper. She wouldn't meet his eyes. Detective Brennan leaned forward, hands clasped on the table. "Mr. Brennan, I need to ask you some questions about your relationship with Ryan Holloway." "I don't have a relationship with Ryan Holloway." "You met with him 2 weeks ago at a cafe downtown." "He asked to apologize. I listened. That's it." Brennan pulled out a tablet and turned it to face Cole. On the screen was a series of emails. Cole's name appeared in several of them. "These were recovered from Mr. Holloway's personal email account. They suggest that you and he had been communicating for several months prior to the Riverside incident, that you provided him with inside information about Stone and Mitchell's acquisition targets." Cole stared at the screen. "That's not true. I never—" "The emails are dated going back 6 months before you even started working here." Sandra's voice was sharp, cutting through the room like a blade. "I didn't write those emails. They came from an account registered to your name, an encrypted email service. The messages reference specific projects, internal discussions, acquisition strategies, information only someone inside the company would know." Cole felt the room closing in. "I don't have an encrypted email account. I barely use regular email. Someone set this up." "That's what we're trying to determine, but you can see how this looks." Patricia slid a printout across the table. Cole scanned it, his pulse hammering in his ears. The emails were detailed technical discussing projects he'd reviewed, meetings he'd attended, decisions the board had made. The language was formal but conversational, exactly the way someone might write if they were trying to sound like him. But the dates were wrong. The first email was sent in May, 4 months before he'd even met Harper. "Look at the dates. I didn't start consulting here until September. How could I have inside information in May? Ryan claims you approached him months earlier, that you offered to help him outmaneuver Harper in exchange for a cut of his deals." Sandra's eyes were cold. "That's a lie." "Can you prove it?" Cole's mind raced. "Check my phone records, my credit card statements. I can show you I was never anywhere near Ryan before that night at the bar." Patricia made a note. "We'll need access to those records." "You can have them, all of them." Cole turned to Harper. "You know me. You know I wouldn't do this." Harper's expression was anguished. I want to believe you, Cole. I do. But I can't ignore evidence. It's not evidence. It's fabrication. Then who fabricated it? And why? Victor's voice was quiet but carried weight. Cole opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't have an answer. Brennan stood. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to need you to come to the station to make a formal statement. You're not under arrest, but this is a serious investigation. I need a lawyer. That's your right. We can arrange that. Patricia handed him a business card. I can recommend someone, but understand that if you're charged, you'll need your own representation. I represent the company. Cole took the card with numb fingers. Harper walked him to the elevator. In the hallway away from the others, she finally looked at him directly. Tell me the truth. Just you and me. I am telling the truth. I didn't do this. Then who did? I don't know. But someone went to a lot of trouble to make it look like I did. The elevator arrived. Cole stepped inside. I'm suspending your consulting contract, effective immediately, until this is resolved. I understand. I'm sorry, Cole. I really am. The doors closed on her stricken face. Cole sat in his truck in the parking garage for 20 minutes trying to process what had just happened. His phone buzzed with a text from Frank. Everything okay? He couldn't even begin to answer that. Another text, this one from Iris. Picking Willa up from school today. Take your time. He'd forgotten to tell her he might be late. He'd forgotten everything except the look on Harper's face when she'd suspended him. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Brennan, this is Jennifer Walsh. I'm a criminal defense attorney. Patricia Chen contacted me on your behalf. We need to meet as soon as possible. I can't afford. First consultation is free. After that, we'll figure something out. Can you be at my office in an hour? Cole checked the time. Yeah, I can do that. She gave him an address and hung up. He drove there in a daze, barely registering the streets. The law office was in an older building downtown, modest but professional. Jennifer Walsh turned out to be a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She listened to his story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When he finished, she set down her pen. This is a setup. I know. No, I mean a sophisticated one. Someone with technical knowledge and access to your personal information. They didn't just forge emails. They created an entire digital trail designed to look like you. Can we prove that? Maybe. We'll need a forensic tech expert to analyze the account, trace the IP addresses, examine metadata. That's expensive. She named a figure that made Cole's vision blur. I don't have that kind of money. Then we'll build the case the old-fashioned way. Phone records, witnesses, timeline verification. It'll take longer, but it's doable. She leaned forward. Cole, I'm going to be straight with you. This looks bad. Someone smart wanted to destroy you and they did their homework. But the dates are your strongest defense. If you can prove you had no connection to Stone and Mitchell before September, that creates reasonable doubt. What about Ryan? He's the one making these accusations. He's also the one who stands to benefit from your downfall. The police will investigate him too, but right now you're the target. Cole rubbed his face. What do I do? You cooperate fully. Give them everything they ask for. Be completely transparent, and you trust me to fight for you. Why should I trust you? Jennifer smiled slightly. Because I've been doing this for 20 years and I can spot a frame job from a mile away. Someone's trying to destroy you and I don't like bullies. The police interview lasted 3 hours. Cole answered every question, provided access to his phone, his laptop, his bank accounts. Detective Brennan was professional but skeptical, pushing hard on the timeline the emails Cole's sudden appearance in Ryan's world. It's convenient. You're a struggling mechanic barely making ends meet. You hear about a development company making deals. You see an opportunity. I didn't hear about anything. I went to a bar. Ryan mocked me. I went back because I liked talking to Harper. That's it. And the Riverside information. How did you know about the contamination? I researched it years ago. It stuck with me. Years ago. Brennan made a note. We'll be verifying that." When it was finally over, Jennifer drove Cole back to his truck. It was dark by then, rain coming down harder. "Go home. Be with your daughter. Don't talk to the press. Don't talk to anyone from Stone and Mitchell. And definitely don't talk to Ryan Holloway. What if he contacts me? You refer him to me immediately." Cole nodded, too exhausted to argue. He drove home through the rain, his mind blank, his body operating on autopilot. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Iris met him at the door. "Willa's asleep. I told her you had to work late." "Thank you." She studied his face. "Whatever's happening, you'll get through it. You're stronger than you think." After she left, Cole stood in the kitchen staring at the table where he'd made the decision to take the consulting job. It felt like a lifetime ago. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You should have stayed in your lane, mechanic." Cole stared at the message, his pulse pounding. Then he forwarded it to Jennifer and blocked the number. He checked on Willa, still asleep, one arm around her rabbit, then retreated to his own room. He lay in bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand who hated him enough to do this. The answer came just before dawn, when exhaustion finally pulled him under. Lauren. It had to be Lauren. The next morning, Cole called in sick to the shop for the first time in 3 years. Frank didn't ask questions, just told him to take care of himself. Cole dropped Willa at school, then drove to Jennifer's office. "I think Lauren Cross set me up." Jennifer was already at her desk, surrounded by files. "Why?" "Because I ruined her career. Every deal I flagged became a deal she couldn't close. Her performance reviews were tanking. Her bonus was cut. She blamed me for destroying her career. The emails predate your coffee meeting with Ryan. So she planned it earlier, set up the account, wrote the messages, then waited for the right moment to deploy them." Jennifer considered this. "It's possible. But Lauren's the one who brought the emails to the police. Why would she incriminate herself? To destroy me. To make sure I can't work in this field again. She said it herself the first day I came to the office. She questioned whether they could trust me. That's motive for harassment, maybe even defamation, but creating an elaborate email trail that could expose her to criminal charges, that's a big risk. Unless she's desperate enough not to care." Jennifer made a note. "I'll have our investigator look into Lauren's digital footprint, see if there's any connection to the encrypted account. But Cole, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that this isn't Lauren, that it's someone else entirely. Who else would want to destroy me? I don't know yet, but we'll find out." Over the next week, Cole's life unraveled in slow motion. The story hit the local news. Not front page, but prominent enough. Consultant accused of corporate espionage. His name, his face, his connection to the Riverside expose, all laid out for public consumption. Parents at Willa's school started whispering. Some pulled their kids away when he showed up for pickup. Mrs. Patterson, Willa's teacher, called him in for a conference. "I just want to make sure Willa's okay. She's been quieter lately, less engaged. She knows something's wrong. I've tried to shield her, but kids are perceptive." Mrs. Patterson hesitated. "For what it's worth, I don't believe what they're saying about you. I've seen how you are with Willa. That's not a man who lies." It was the first kind thing anyone outside his immediate circle had said in days. At the shop, Frank kept him busy with work, asked no questions, and ran interference when customers brought up the news. Tommy stopped by one afternoon with coffee and a sympathetic shoulder. "People suck sometimes, but this will blow over. Truth always comes out." Cole wanted to believe that. Jennifer called on a Thursday morning, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "We found something. The encrypted email account was created from an IP address that traces back to a coffee shop in southeast Portland. We pulled security footage from that date." She paused. "Lauren Cross was there. 3 hours, corner table, laptop." "So she did it." "Not necessarily. Being at a coffee shop doesn't prove she created the account, but it's a start. We're getting a warrant for her home and work computers." The answer came 2 days later, delivered by Detective Brennan himself. He showed up at the shop just after lunch, his expression grim. "We need to talk. Privately." They went to Frank's office, a cramped space with oil-stained walls and a desk buried under invoices. "Lauren Cross has been arrested. She confessed to creating the fake email account and framing you for corporate espionage." Cole's legs went weak. "Why?" "Because you cost her 3 major deals. Every project you flagged became a deal she couldn't close. Her performance reviews were tanking. Her bonus was cut. She blamed you for destroying her career. So she decided to destroy yours. Ryan had nothing to do with it." "No, he was as shocked as anyone when we showed him the emails. He thought they were real." Brennan handed him a document. "This is a formal letter clearing you of all accusations. The investigation is closed. You're free." Cole stared at the letter, the words blurring together. "I'm sorry this happened to you. For what it's worth, I'm glad we got it right in the end." After he left, Cole sat in Frank's office for a long time, holding the letter, feeling nothing. Frank appeared in the doorway. "You okay, kid?" "I don't know. I should be relieved, but I just feel empty." "That's normal. You've been fighting for 2 weeks. Takes time for the adrenaline to wear off." Cole looked up. "She almost destroyed everything. My reputation, my job, my ability to provide for Willa. All because I was good at my job. Some people can't handle other people being better than them. But you won. Don't forget that." "Did I? Because it doesn't feel like winning." "Give it time. It will." Harper called him that evening, her voice thick with emotion. "Cole, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have fought harder for you." "You were protecting your company, I understand." "No, I was scared, and I let that fear make me doubt you when I should have trusted my gut." She took a shaky breath. "The board wants to reinstate you immediately. Full back pay for the suspension. And they want to offer you a permanent position, not part-time. Full senior consultant with benefits, profit sharing, the works." Cole stood at his kitchen window watching rain streak down the glass. "I need to think about it." "Of course. Take all the time you need." A pause. "Cole, yeah. You changed everything here. The culture, the standards, the way we think about development. That doesn't go away just because Lauren tried to burn it down." After they hung up, Cole made dinner for Willa. Spaghetti with garlic bread, her favorite. They ate together at the kitchen table, and she told him about the book report she was writing, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. "Mrs. Patterson says I'm really good at writing. She said she thinks I should enter a contest." "You should. You're great at it. Are you feeling better, Dad?" He looked at her, this fierce, perceptive little person he'd somehow raised. "Yeah, kiddo, I'm feeling a lot better." "Good, because you were sad for a while and I didn't like it. I'm sorry about that." "It's okay. Everyone gets sad sometimes. That's what Iris says." After Willa went to bed, Cole sat on the porch with a beer, listening to the rain and thinking about Harper's offer. Full-time meant security, benefits, the ability to really make a difference in how Portland grew. But it also meant giving up the shop, giving up the simplicity of fixing engines, the satisfaction of problems that had clear solutions. His phone rang. Ryan. Cole almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "I heard what happened. I had to call to say I'm sorry, again. For real, this time." "You didn't do anything?" "I created the environment where Lauren thought this was acceptable. I made competition toxic. I made people think their worth was tied to deals closed instead of quality work." Ryan's voice was raw. "I'm the reason she felt desperate enough to destroy you. That's on me. That's on her, not you. Maybe. But I'm done pretending I don't have responsibility for the culture I built." A pause. "For what it's worth, you deserve none of this. And if you take that job Harper's offering, you'll do better with it than I ever did." "I haven't decided yet." "Then let me help you decide. Take it. Change the company. Make it what it should have been all along. Because if anyone can do that, it's you." The call ended. Cole sat there until the beer was warm and the rain had stopped. Then he went inside, pulled out his notebook and started writing. Not a list this time, a plan. The plan took shape over 3 days of careful thought and late-night revisions. Cole filled pages with ideas, crossed out half of them, refined the rest. By Sunday evening he had something concrete, something worth fighting for. Monday morning he called Harper. "I want to accept the position, but I have conditions." "I'm listening." "I don't want to just review projects. I want to create a new division, something that brings real-world expertise into development before mistakes happen. We hire people who've actually built things, contractors, engineers, city workers, people who understand ground-level reality. We make them part of the decision-making process from day one." Harper was quiet for a moment. "That's ambitious." "It's necessary. Lauren wasn't wrong that I cost the company deals. I did. But those were bad deals that would have cost you more in the long run. If we build this right, we don't just avoid disasters. We create better projects, smarter growth." "What would you call this division?" Cole looked at the notebook where he'd written the name a dozen times, testing how it felt. "Foundations, because you can't build anything lasting if you ignore what's underneath." "I love it. Bring me a full proposal. I'll take it to the board. There's one more thing." "What?" "I'm keeping my job at Frank's shop, 2 days a week, non-negotiable." "Why?" "Because I need to remember where I came from, and because fixing engines keeps me grounded in a way office work never will." Harper laughed softly. "You know most people would kill for a full-time senior position with profit sharing, right? I'm not most people." "No, you're really not, and that's exactly why this will work." The board meeting was set for Thursday. Cole spent 3 nights preparing his proposal, working at the kitchen table after Willa went to bed, refining every detail. He outlined the division structure, hiring criteria, integration with existing departments, projected costs and potential savings. He included case studies of projects they'd avoided and projects they could have improved with better front-end analysis. Willa watched him work one evening, sitting cross-legged on the couch with her book report. "You look serious." "I'm preparing something important." "For your new job?" "Maybe, if they say yes." She considered this, chewing on her pencil. "What happens if they say no? Then I keep doing what I'm doing. It wouldn't be the end of the world." "But you want them to say yes." Cole looked up at her. "Yeah, I do." "Then they will. Because you're really good at this stuff." She said it with the absolute certainty of a 7-year-old who believed her father could do anything. "How do you know I'm good at it?" "Because Iris said so. She read the newspaper article about you. She said you're a hero." "I'm not a hero, kiddo." "That's what heroes always say." She went back to her book report, the matter settled in her mind. Thursday arrived cold and clear, the kind of November morning where Portland's gray skies briefly gave way to sharp blue. Cole wore his one good suit, the same one he'd worn to his father's funeral 5 years ago. It still fit barely. Frank saw him heading out early and raised an eyebrow. "Big day. Board presentation. Wish me luck." "Don't need luck when you've got the truth on your side." Frank handed him a thermos of coffee. "But take this anyway. Their coffee probably tastes like corporate ambition." Cole smiled despite his nerves. "Thanks, Frank. And kid, whatever happens, you've still got a home here." The glass tower gleamed in the morning light. Cole rode the elevator up, his proposal tucked under one arm, his father's watch on his wrist for luck. Harper met him outside the conference room. "Ready." "As I'll ever be." "Victor's already sold on it. So am I. You just need to convince the other 5 board members that this isn't just damage control, that it's the future." "No pressure. You've got this. Just be yourself. That's what got you here." The conference room was full. All 6 board members, plus Marcus from compliance, plus 2 people from finance Cole didn't recognize. Everyone had copies of his proposal in front of them. Victor gestured to the empty chair at the head of the table. "Mr. Brennan, thank you for coming. We've reviewed your proposal. I have to say it's impressive." "Thank you. But impressive on paper and viable in practice are 2 different things." This came from a board member named Peterson, a gray-haired man who Harper had warned was skeptical of anything new. "You're proposing we hire a team of essentially blue-collar consultants to second-guess our professional acquisition staff. That's expensive and potentially insulting to people who've been doing this work for years." "With respect, Mr. Peterson, I'm not proposing we second-guess anyone. I'm proposing we add expertise we currently lack. Your acquisition team is excellent at financial analysis, market research, legal due diligence. But they're not trained to spot soil contamination, structural red flags, or long-term environmental risks. That's not their fault. It's just not their specialty. We have engineers for that. You bring in engineers after you've already committed to a deal. I'm talking about bringing in ground-level expertise before you make the commitment, before you spend money on something that might be fundamentally flawed." Another board member, a woman named Torres, leaned forward. "Give us an example, a real one." Cole opened his folder. 6 months ago, you looked at a warehouse conversion project in northwest Portland. Beautiful building, great location, solid financials. You passed on it because the asking price was too high. I remember that deal." David Sandra's replacement spoke up. The owners wouldn't budge on price. "Did anyone walk the building, actually go inside and look at the infrastructure?" David hesitated. "We had photos, virtual tours. The building has a flat roof with inadequate drainage. Portland gets 40 inches of rain a year. Within 3 years, that roof would need complete replacement at a cost of roughly $300,000. The electrical system is outdated, probably knob and tube wiring in sections, which means insurance costs would be astronomical, and the foundation shows early signs of settling on the north side." Cole slid photos across the table, his own taken during a visit he'd made on his own time. "These problems aren't visible in virtual tours, but they're real, and they would have eaten your profit margin alive." The room was silent. "So you're saying we were right to pass?" Torres's voice was careful. "No. I'm saying with the right expertise you could have negotiated a fair price that accounted for these issues. The building's still beautiful, the location's still great, but the owners didn't know about these problems either. Knowledge is power in negotiation." Peterson frowned. "How did you know to look at that building? We passed on it months before you started working here." "I read the business journal. I research properties. It's what I do. And that's what the foundations team would do. Constant research, constant analysis, catching problems before they become expensive disasters." Victor smiled slightly. "I think Mr. Brennan has made his point." The presentation lasted another 40 minutes. Cole answered questions about hiring, budget integration with existing workflows, metrics for success. He showed them projections of money-saved deals, improved risks avoided. He talked about how Portland was growing and how growth done wrong created problems that lasted generations. Development isn't just about profit, it's about responsibility. To the people who live in these buildings, work in these spaces, raise families in these neighborhoods. If we build it wrong, they're the ones who pay the price, not us. When he finished, Victor looked around the table. "Questions?" No one spoke. "Then I'll call for a vote. All in favor of creating the Foundations Division with Cole Brennan as Senior Director?" 6 hands went up. Unanimous. Victor extended his hand across the table. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Brennan. Let's build something worth building." Cole called Frank from the parking garage, his hand still shaking slightly. They said yes. Full approval, budget, staff, everything. "Of course they did, I told you. I need to talk to you about hours. I want to keep working at the shop, but I need to cut back to 2 days a week." "Already figured that out. You take Mondays and Fridays. Gives me coverage on our slowest days. Gives you a full week in the middle for your corporate stuff." "Just like that." Frank's voice softened. "I'm proud of you, kid. Your old man would be too." Cole had to swallow hard before he could respond. "Thanks, Frank. That means a lot." His next call was to Iris, then to Willa's school, letting them know he'd be picking her up himself today. No need for after-school care. He wanted to be the one to tell her. When Willa saw him waiting outside the school, her face lit up. She ran over and threw her arms around his waist. "You're here? I'm here, and I have news." They went for ice cream, even though it was 40 degrees outside. Willa got chocolate chip with rainbow sprinkles. Cole got coffee. They sat at a sticky table by the window, and he told her about the board meeting, the new division, what it would mean. "So you're going to make sure buildings don't fall down?" "Basically, yeah. That's important. Buildings falling down would be bad. Very bad." She took a huge bite of ice cream, got sprinkles on her nose, and grinned at him. "I'm glad they said yes. You're happy when you do this work. Happier than at the garage." "I like the garage too." "I know, but this is different. This is the thing you're supposed to do." Cole marveled at her sometimes. 7 years old, and she understood things that had taken him decades to figure out. "You're pretty smart, you know that." "I know. I get it from you." Outside, the afternoon light was already starting to fade, winter pressing in early. But inside the ice cream shop, with his daughter's laughter filling the space between them, Cole felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not just hope. Not just purpose. Peace. The kind that comes from knowing you've built something on solid ground.